Hi, my name is Zoe, and I'm a teen advisor. I'm a film student at Arizona State. I'm currently studying in Italy, and most of my advocacy is like gender justice.
I love it. Said, how are you liking Rome?
It's pretty cool. We
Right?
haven't really done any of the touristy stuff yet. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to it, but like we've just been going to classes and like getting settled, and it's it's really cool. I'm really glad I like took the leap and decided to do this because it's weird to do it in your first year. It's uncommon, but I did
Okay.
do it. That's fun.
Yeah. Nah, man, grab the opportunity and just do it. Cause like you may not get it again in such a like school supported way, right? So yeah, I say jump in, but awesome. Okay, cool. Well, good to know about your like advocacy history. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Okay, so I have questions. My first one is about art as a tool for resistance. So obviously like you're very like skilled artist. Your work is really powerful and breathtaking in a skillfully composed and technically constructed way.
So,
But it's also very attractive as like a galvanizing force and a call to community. So when creating art with such deep meaning and depth, how do you see your responsibility as a creator? Is there ever a tension between creating personal experience and creating community? And how do you think that those two things inform each other? Or do you ever see a tension between choosing between what is more artistically powerful or what is more true to your personal experience?
what I love to do is use high quality art and elements of pop culture, whether it is through music, through storytelling, through fashion, to amplify disability narratives. And by disability narratives, I really just mean the concept of different, the concept of accepting all different parts of your identity and elevating this to mainstream discussion. So I have found that as a person who really advocates for amplifying disability, accessibility, neurodivergence, and other different sort of mental health conditions and chronic conditions, it's often a difficult topic for a lot of people to embrace and feel comfortable talking about. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of folks feel uncomfortable or perhaps that it's taboo. But I tend to think that it's really society that tells us that it's not a comfortable topic. It's society that tells us it's limiting. It's society that tells us to sheer and steer ourselves away from it. And so what I have really been wanting to do is really penetrate that overarching, like silent voice that tells us that we shouldn't accept those parts of ourselves. And I think some of the quickest ways to get to the masses is through really high quality, fun, positive art. When we talk about joy as resistance, a lot of times people come to me and they're like, Lachi, you look like you're having a good time. Like you look like you're having fun. Everybody you work with is having fun. And then they say, but you have a disability, but you're advocating for disability. And I'm like, it's not a but. We're happy. And if you gain a disability, you can be happy too. We're showing you that this is not an end all, this is not a be all, that this is just a transition that happens in your life, or perhaps that you're born with, that is natural. And you should celebrate all parts of yourself. So, really, to answer your question, is the act of putting my full self into what I love, which is music, fashion, and storytelling, lends itself to high quality art. And so they, at this point in my life, are very inextricable. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I like your use of the word inextricable because I think that's in part of my question later, the
Sure.
exact word. That's a fun word. The second part of that is beyond that. How do you like navigate the expectations placed on artists, particularly marginalized artists, to create work that is like inherently political or representative of a movement? And do you ever feel pressure to educate or advocate in ways that might limit your artistic freedom? How do you balance that?
Wow, that is a question, huh? Y'all was like, we're gonna dig in. So
Yeah.
that's a really the reason I say it's a powerful question is because, I firmly believe that art is in response to culture. I think that artists, in and of themselves, are commentators of culture, right? So
Mhm.
a thing happens in the world and then we respond to it with our art, right? So in that sense, it will always have some sort of deeper meaning that is tied to the world around us. And secondly, art is also born of our experiences. So our lived experience is going to highly inform our art. So for me, if I say to myself, I want to create fashion that is part of who I am, right? And so I use a cane. I use a guide cane to walk the streets, but I also love to wear magnificent dresses and look fun and flashy and cute like all the time, right? So I'm like, my canes need to match that. And so I will sit here and I'll glam up my canes. And people will say, wow, you're making a statement. And it's a combination of I just really wanted to express myself with my art. And through expressing myself through fashion, it inevitably is a statement, right?
Mhm.
So when made the decision on the music side of things to really um, express the deepest parts of myself, society told me, you know, was wrong. It just lended itself to art that was saying something deeper. And interestingly enough, when you begin to create art that's saying something deeper, then you get those people who've been waiting for the message. They all start popping up like daisies. They're like, oh my God, you're speaking directly to me. Oh my gosh. And then the fan base starts to kind of become its own beast because they're finally being spoken to. And then people go, oh my God, you're creating a movement. But the truth of the matter is, I was just expressing myself and I was expressing a part of society we don't ever see. And everybody that really needed to see that finally got to come together and feel seen and feel heard. The other thing, though, and I know I'm taking forever on all my answers, but the other thing, though, because your questions are too deep, so you're going to get a deep answer.
I
Um,
appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, the other thing, too, is you asked about the like, do you always feel like you have to be teaching? And I feel that not every moment is a teaching moment, but
Mhm.
every moment is a learning moment. And so it doesn't exhaust me to just speak my truth and speak who I am. Because, I'm not here to grab somebody by the collar and shake them and go like, just know it already. But at the same time, I'm just saying, this is who I am. This is how I move in the world. This is my lived experience. And that in and of itself creates that learning moment for that other individual. I also love to use art joyfully because it allows people, like I said earlier, to feel more comfortable about talking about these really difficult concepts, whether it's everything from disability or accessibility or self acceptance, whether it is talking about, you know, the birthing issues that we're having, whether it's talking about the climate issues that we're having. Folks with disabilities are on like the front lines of all of these things, the first to go and then the last to know type deal. And I want to be able to make sure that we have these conversations so people feel safe, feel heard, feel seen. And the only way to do that is by let me put it to you like this. I don't believe that we're going to change the system by burning everything down and like
Mhm.
living in huts. But I get it. I understand why everybody wants to really like dismantle the whole thing. I also don't think we're going to be able to change the system by like trying to get ourselves in a position of power and then try to shift the needle one little needle at a time. I actually think the true way to change a system is to get the people benefiting from the system excited to change it with you. And you kind of got to be a little sneaky. You kind of got to do pop music that, you know, puts in little secret messages that says you care about this topic. Or you can use media to say, hey, it turns out you have a gay cousin. You know, you can use fashion to say, look at this Yas Queen energy you wish you also could be a part of. Then eventually people benefiting from holding down these marginalized folks start going, yo, I want some of that spice. I want some of that grit. I want some of that movement. And begin to recognize that they really do want this in their life.
Thank you so much. My next question, I think, was kind of answered. I guess part of it I can still ask.
Give it a shot. Let's see where we go.
So it's, how do you blend technical skill with activism? How do they inform each other? And is there a tension between the art and the activism? While they're both inextricable, do you see one as more important than the other? While they create a conversation, like, do you find one more vocal than another?
Well, firstly, with technical skill, I feel that it's really important for people to get good and be good at their craft.
Yeah.
I think that people really need to lean into that. And I recognize that, some folks who don't have the money, or their parents don't have the ability or knowledge or know-how on how to get them maybe the lessons or whatever. I do recognize that, and that there's privilege in being able to really get good at your skill. But by hook or crook, I always really encourage folks to just be as good as you can at your skill. Really focus on that, because at the end of the day, whether you don't utter a single word of activism, you showing up in a place where folks are underestimating you is also its own form of making a statement. So I always encourage folks, definitely make sure that your skill is as tip top as possible, and undeniable. I know myself as a woman of color with a disability, I've got to work like 3 times as hard to get a third of the way of my counterparts. And so while that's not the fairest situation, it's the reality. So it's good for us to make sure that we've got that backbone in what we're showing up to and saying, hey, I'm a competitive artist as well. I think that for me personally, when it comes to art and activism, today, now it wasn't always the case that my art and my activism were so inextricable. But today, with the climate that we're in, and the fact that, we need to resist in any way while also being able to live our best lives, I think we're at a point in which art and activism are so necessary. They're both so equally necessary. Getting the words out in any way, shape, or form, getting the joy out and building the community is more necessary than ever. And for me and my team, I also run the organization RAMPed, which stands for Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities. And we're sort of this large global network of artists and musicians and music industry professionals who identify with disability or neurodivergence or whatever, who also intersect with all of these other things, whether it's being a woman, whether it's identifying as queer, whether it is identifying as an immigrant, right? To be able to get over that isolation, come together, collaborate, and create from a place of power building, that requires an artistic flair. That requires an advocate flair, that you have to know what you're fighting for. You have to love what you're fighting for. And this is why I believe that they are inextricably linked, at least in my view.
Thank you. I'm gonna switch the order of the next question, and also my internet is not working very well, so my video just shut off.
All good, all
My
good.
next question. The clear play on words for the title of the tour, Mad Different, has complex depth and meaning. But the strand that was most compelling to me was the juxtaposition of that title, Mad, with the overwhelming sense of joy and community depicted in several of the pieces, especially in Diseducation and Out of the Dark. How did
Yeah.
those choices inform the tour overall, and how do you view joy and self-expression as a form of resistance?
I love that question, because MAD so MAD Different is essentially a celebration of all of my different forms of identity. And through that, just a celebration of difference overall. And it's not just an acceptance, and it's further than embracing, it's celebrating it. And when I use the word mad in a couple of ways. Well, first and foremost, mad as in the word very. It's a very kind of colloquial urban way to say like, yo, this is like really, really, really different. So it's a celebration. In our music videos, we put sign language front and center. We have audio description. All of the crews had different disabilities, neurodivergence, identified as queer, etc. And as we do the Mad Different shows that we have, booked, this is all translated live. It's a very different experience. I have a sign language performer signing while I play the piano, right? So it's very mad different. But I also use the term mad in, different is how I kind of bring in the discussion of disability. And mad is sometimes how I bring in the discussion of being a woman of color, a Black woman. A lot of folks ascribe being angry or upset to being a Black woman. And I've decided to just embrace that. And, there's a lot of reasons why Black women in America should be mad, should be angry, should be here to sort of punch and fight, right? But then there's also that third meaning of mad, which I also identify beyond being blind, I identify as neurodivergent. I am diagnosed ADHD, I'm diagnosed OCD, I'm diagnosed general anxiety, I have PTSD. So I have all sorts of neurodivergences flowing around. And one of the sort of reclaimed words for neurodivergence is mad. So historically, mad has been used to mean insane, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a movement to kind of reclaim words like mad or crip, similar to how folks have reclaimed the term fat, et cetera. And so in that sense, in those three very different ways, I use the term mad to really celebrate this idea of mad difference, whether it's through the art, whether it's through my identities and my culture, and whether it is through discussing my disability and neurodivergence. And I juxtapose it with the joy, because we're not just here fighting for freedom, we're fighting for the ability to openly express our joy. And so that's what I do in Mad Different. I want to say, hey, I'm queer and I'm here to just be really excited and happy about it. And what folks are trying to take away from me is my ability to be happy, open, and loud about it. Hey, have a disability, and folks want me to downplay that or hide that or silence me. And really what I'm fighting for is the ability to joyfully express it outwardly and openly. And so that is also what Mad Different is looking to display.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh.
I just have two more questions that I'm going to ask. The first one is about girlhood. So the act of defining girlhood often creates barriers. And as a queer gender fluid teenager, I've often felt excluded from certain ideas of girlhood. But I watched the BTS of A Girl, and you asked Precious a question that I want to bring back to you, which is, what do people need to hear right now as it pertains to a girl?
The thing about it is that we live in quite a binary society that attempts to sort of move forward in its definitions and discussions of gender and gender fluidity, gender understanding, gender expansiveness, and then also just gets pulled, wrenched back every time we think we've made a couple of steps forward. I ended up writing that song, actually. I don't remember what piece of legislation came out. It wasn't necessarily the rollback of Roe v. Wade, but it was something in the wake of that. And I remember I was sitting in a hotel because we were on tour or something, and I was just so bubbled with, I didn't know if it was rage. I didn't know what I was feeling. And so I sit in the hallway with I hit record on my phone and I just start singing, and the words just kind of pour out. The thing that really gets me about this whole discussion is that the complexities of the discussion lie within each of us as people. We are as complex as this discussion, but we're binarying it. We're not binary humans. We are hugely complicated human beings. We are the type of folks that, sometimes we do, sometimes as a woman, I do like to be very feminine. Sometimes as a woman, I do like to be androgynous. Sometimes I like to embrace my masculine sides. And that should be okay. That should be okay. The thing that we're fighting against here is, why is there fear of a woman or a non-binary person, I would say, I suppose, a non-male identifying person? Why is there fear for a non-male identifying person to be themselves, to love themselves, to enjoy life, to celebrate their wins and their woes? Why is there fear there? And usually the answer is because there is power there. There is a fear of the power that comes from a non-male identifying person being able to express themselves fully. I think we need to start with that question. Why is there that fear there? Why is there fear of that power? Once we can answer that question, we will begin to dismantle that power, because the truest power comes when you're able to completely accept yourself. And I don't just mean women and non-binary people accepting themselves. I mean those who are anti those groups accepting themselves as well. Once you fully accept who you are, then you're no longer a crab in a barrel. You are just a person in the world ready to accept other people in the world. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it definitely does. Thank you. That was a really, really cool answer. It made my brain go.
Thank you. That is always my goal.
It definitely worked. It met the goal. Met the goal. I'm gonna combine two questions because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to ask, because I had so many and I had to limit it because they were like cut it down.
Okay.
How do you see your work resonate in the current political climate?
Oh my God. Oh no.
Do you see it? How do you see your role as an artist in this divisive time? What do you hope audiences, especially young people, take away from Mad Different? And how can they turn inspiration into action?
It's interesting. I began writing Mad Different before all of this, right? I was writing it back in, July, August, September of last year, and we started rolling it out at the end of the year and into the new year. So I had absolutely no idea. I was on the assumption, right, like many people were, of it going a different way, the outcome going a different way. But here we are. And I actually believe that discussion, two things. One, being loud and proud and joyous, or whether it is through joy, whether it is through, screaming, whether it is through music, whether it is through showing up. Now is the time to be loud and proud about these very particular discussions. Let us talk about our womanhood. Let us claim our power as folks with disabilities. Let us celebrate our queerness. Let us stand in our color. Let us stand in our immigration status. Let us stand in all of these things that are threatened, because I don't believe that our America, that our world, that our globe can really withstand this kind of friction for too long. And the pendulum will swing the other way, and we will be there to celebrate when it does. And the only way we keep ourselves from rolling too far back is if we keep that momentum pushing while we're in this turmoil. I do know a lot of people were like, I don't know what to do. I need to go into my hidey hole and this and that. And I say, I understand. I get it, honestly. But for those of you who are here for it, who are ready to be on the front lines and get out and say what they have to say and do what they got to do, I highly encourage it, because you're not just doing it for you. You're not just doing it for your community. You're doing it for those folks who are afraid to do it, who are, it's a privilege to be able to do it. It's a privilege to be able to get out here and be loud and proud. So I say, take that privilege and use it. The other thing is, what was your last part? How it would resonate with folks and young folks?
Yeah, how do you want like what do you hope young audiences what do you hope audiences, especially young people, take away from Mad Different, and how
Yeah.
do they turn inspiration into action? That was last.
Yeah. When I was a young person, which was like a billion years ago, um I remember, like, I would watch TV or go on the internet, go on YouTube and Instagram, and I was really looking for people who looked like me, had my story, had, some people that I could look up to, essentially. And it was really difficult. It was difficult to find, first of all, just women in general. It was difficult to find women of color doing badass things, especially in music and entertainment. But it was impossible to find a woman of color in entertainment that had a disability doing big things. And so one of the things that I know that I am really doing as part of my North Star purpose is to penetrate for young folks to start not only seeing someone like me out here doing this stuff, but a lot of the folks that we have at Ramped who are advocating for a disability, advocating for access, and showing folks that this is, you can have a viable career in entertainment. You can be somebody who is seen, somebody who deserves to be heard, even though you have a ton of different margins that you identify with. So I know a lot of young folks and their parents. So we perform at a lot of schools, right? At universities, high schools, and middle schools and stuff like that. And we'll get a lot of questions from students of like, A, how do I like accept if I have something different? Because everyone's going to kind of pounce on me if I do. And then the second question is also, how do I be an ally? And I love to answer both of those for young folks because I never got the opportunity to ask that question to somebody and get like a real answer. And I tell people that first and foremost, if you believe that you have some form of disability or a neurodivergence or a chronic condition or a mental health condition, and especially if it's, non-visible, like it's something other people couldn't see, I say go to the internet and just Google it, read up about it, and find community around it. What are other people doing? Not just what are other people saying, not just what's WebMD is saying. What's going on online? Are there forums? Are there places where you don't even have to do anything. You can lurk and build community around this thing so that you don't feel so alone. Number two, if you want to be an ally, well, recognize what disability really is. Disability is not just physical, like wheelchair or blind folks or deaf folks. It's mental health, it's anxiety, it's ADD, it's depression, it's bipolar, it's asthma, it's diabetes. Like, a lot of folks think older folks have diabetes. I've met so many young folks with diabetes and they just don't tell anyone. And recognize that you might fit somewhere into this really broad thing. And that it's really a question of overcompensating, right? Like, what am I overcompensating to try to keep up with everybody else? And once you realize like where you fit, you don't have to like identify as having a disability, but you can start to empathize with what that means. And so those are the things that I try to give young folks as it pertains to disability. And the other thing that I wanted to really hit home is this. A lot of people will say things like, you achieved something despite being a woman, right? She did all this and she's a woman. I can't believe it. Or they did all this despite their disability, or, things of that nature. I want to tell people you didn't do all of these accomplishments despite your disability. You did all those accomplishments despite ableism. You did all those accomplishments despite inaccessibility. You didn't achieve the goals you achieved in science and math and tech and became a CEO or whatever despite being a woman. You did it despite sexism. You didn't, get great grades in school and get to the top university or, do really well at sports despite being a Black person or a person of color. You did it despite racism. So I really want to let folks know that these are social constructs that we are navigating against, not who we are, but who society is that needs to change. So if you walk forward with that mindset, the activism just comes naturally.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a really, again, when my brain think, oh my gosh.
Well, thank you so very much. These were like really like pretty intense questions. I mean, I've been on Fox News, I've been on CNN, and they're just like, oh, how do you like doing music? So thank you so much for your super thoughtful questions, and really excited to see how this interview ends up turning out on Girl Up.
Yeah. Thank you. Like what you do is super inspiring. I definitely want like to pursue artivism. I don't. That's what some people
Sure,
call
sure,
it.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, Thank you so very much. And, stay in touch. I would absolutely love to continue to watch you yourself as you grow, especially as an artivist in the sort of gender expansive sort of queer space, because we need so many. So excited to see where you take this.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, we shall see you soon.
See you soon. Buonasera. That's what.
Buonasera. Bye.
Bye.